And now I would like to give the floor to Klaus Dohrmann, Vice President, Sector Development for DHL, Customer Solutions and Innovation. And I think we're all thrilled to see what he's going to say and what is his view, what are his views on sustainable space logistics. Klaus?
Thank you very much, and hope you all can hear me okay. Just give me a second to set up my screen share here. Okay, so I guess you can see my screen now. Can I just get some feedback on that? All right. So thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. And also thank you for inviting DHL to this summit here. Because I think, we are maybe not the obvious participant in this kind of conferences. So we really appreciate being part of that. And also let me thank Professor De Weck for his presentation. I found this really amazing. And especially I'd like to thank him for outlining the importance of logistics. And as you can imagine, my presentation will also be about the importance of logistics. However, I want to take a more down-to-earth perspective on that. I was asked to talk about the transformation we have seen in logistics, in the logistics industry, and I will talk about the drivers behind that. So my objective today is not so much to help you with space logistics. I think Professor Levesque did a great presentation on that. My objective today is to trigger and to contribute to a thought process on how we can apply what we learned about logistics over the last decades on Earth, how we can apply this to space, and then jointly also move forward on that topic. So let me start with some numbers, but I won't go into that because you probably know all these numbers much better than I do. However, I think when we look at these categories, the growth we are seeing in space as a business, the fact that space is indeed a busy space and growing, you all are very well aware of that, and the fact that the space is actually a global and even beyond business. I wanted to outline, this is a perfect fit to the logistics industry because this means, of course, an attractiveness of the market, which triggers investment into equipment and other stuff. It also means a high level of complexity, which we are dealing with on Earth as well on a daily basis, of course. And then the fact that it's a global business also comes with complexity and the need, to cover the globe, and in this case, even beyond. So we feel a perfect fit for us, and hopefully also for the industry, for us to be involved as logistics service providers. So looking at the space supply chain, and I know that this is a very high level way of looking at it, but it's not about the details here. My point is that we look at the space supply chain as an end-to-end supply chain. And I will talk about this more later when I talk about logistics transformation. So end-to-end meaning actually starting on Earth and ending on Earth for a topic of circular economy, which was covered, I guess, yesterday as well. And what this means is basically that we hope, although Professor De Weck outlined the differences, but also many similarities, we hope that we can use this logistics knowledge, the concepts we're having, the learnings we had over time. We can use this for this end-to-end supply chain, including the space part of it. So, and this is where we feel we can contribute to the discussion and also to the success of that. Going into a little bit more detail here. Just a second. Here. Going a little bit into more detail, it is this constant process of plan, source, make, move, return. Of course, in different areas on different levels, but this is where we see the similarities. And while Professor Levesque outlined, what needs to happen in space and the complexities there, I'd also want to add that there's already a lot of complexity when it comes to moving space logistics or space assets on Earth, when it comes to packaging, when it comes to safety, also to sustainability topics, and so on and so forth. So the complexity of space logistics already starts on Earth, and it continues, in this logic going forward. So why DHL and why DPDHL? Why are we looking at this, and why do we feel there's a fit of how we look at our business, at the business models, and of course, even more so at our customers? On the left-hand side, you see our group strategy, and for sure, I will not go into the details here, but I highlighted 3 areas that I feel are really important when we talk space logistics and we talk about the fit of our company to that. Top right, you see our strategy 2025 uses the claim delivering excellence in a digital world. And I want to highlight this term of excellence. So not only for space logistics, but in many areas we're active at delivering an excellent quality and excellent service is really crucial. A couple of years I was taking care also of the aviation and aerospace sector. And dealing with customers that were mentioned before, Airbus, Boeing, Bombardier, and others. And the level of excellence you have to deliver is amazingly high. Same holds true for energy customers when it comes to safety and compliance. So really, really important to deliver that pretty much everywhere in every industry, but in particular in these areas. Second, also to raise the level a little bit when we talk about our purpose. You see this on top of that house here. The purpose is connecting people and improving lives. And this is where I feel this is a perfect fit to space and space logistics. You see on the right-hand side the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, something we support as well. And this is reflected in our purpose. So it's not only about economic value to be created, but doing this in a sustainable way. And this leads me to the third element that I highlighted, to the topic of sustainability. Again, I recognize it was the main topic of yesterday's session, which is great, I think, to start a program with the topic of sustainability. And also there, this is already relevant big time on Earth for everything we're doing. And we see this request coming from our customers more and more. And this is not limited to CO2 emissions, which is of course a big topic for the logistics industry, but this includes also plastics and air quality, the circular topic I mentioned before. So everything that is also reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's why I feel this is a fit, and that's the reason also why we are happy to contribute to events like this, and we hope that we can even extend that conversation afterwards. Okay, let me now talk about 2 examples that we see when we talk about transformation and logistics transformation. And this is not related to space and space logistics at all. Again, I'd like you to use this, for your thought processes, and also try to transfer this together, into space and into the future. So the first one is, I would argue we've seen a transformation for logistics, of logistics, when it comes to the purpose of what we're doing and why we're doing that. And you see this development on the business side coming from the age of manufacturing, where everything was about efficiency, into the age of distribution, the start of globalization as well, later on the age of information, and then the age of the customer. And I think this was a turning point for logistics, because that's also the subtitle of my presentation today, because at this point, it was not only about efficiency anymore. It was not only about cost effectiveness anymore. It was about logistics becoming really a value driver for the industry, for all industries. So why is this? The age of the customer. So we see that the focus on the customer has significant implications on logistics. You probably heard about this term of the experience economy. So it is about delivering the customer experience. And a big part of that is actually delivering the product or delivering the service, which is obviously linked to logistics. The other one is that we do see that asset ownership is not so important anymore. And I come to this also in a B2B environment. So everything as a service becomes more and more important. And with this also, when you think of aftermarket, of spare parts, logistics, keeping this asset up and running, becomes more and more important, actually also to get your financial income streams. And technology, which is quite often the focus topic of innovation and future discussions also in our industry, technology from my perspective is only the enabler for that. And of course, this many technologies like IoT, sensors, we now see this with big data, they gave a big push towards this, but they're not the reason for that. Yeah? So an enabler. So with this transformation we see, coming from the business side, from the customer side, to a certain degree also from society, we do see the role of logistics increasing big time. As I said, logistics actually delivering that customer experience or the customer promise, if you want. And this is the reason why we feel logistics will become a strategic lever on Earth, and as we heard before, obviously also in space. So that would be my first example when it comes to transformation that we've seen in logistics. The second one is about logistics business models. And I'd like to take you with me on that journey that logistics service providers and logistics business models went, starting in the 70s, more or less. So when we start looking at the bottom of this pyramid, that's the concept of 1PL, so first-party logistics provider, which was basically not a logistics provider at all, because companies, producers, manufacturers, they were taking care of their logistics on their own, with their own assets as well. So a manufacturing company owning their own trucks, running their own warehouses in their own facilities, and so on and so forth. And over time, then the logistics service providers came in, and there was this concept in the 80s of the second-party logistics, the 2PL. So we've seen third parties coming in with their assets, providing transportation, handling, warehouse storage services. So this is like trucking companies offering their services to manufacturers or fast-moving consumer goods companies. Next wave, you probably guessed it, is then 3PL, third-party logistics, where we saw asset-light service providers or freight forwarders, is another term that is used for that. So not bringing in assets, but intelligence to coordinate all of that. All these 2PLs, because the more parties that are involved, the more complexity. So there was a small margin, profit margin to be made for these 3PLs. So to give you a number here, the EBIT margin of 3 to 4% is actually top notch in that business, but it's an asset-light business, so that's the consequence of that. And then only in the mid-90s, we saw the concept of 4PL, or lead logistics provider. And this is to my earlier point. This is because there was a need from the customer side, so B2B, even B2C, a need to take an end-to-end perspective on logistics. So not only managing the 2PL, the asset owners, but more or less all parties being involved in the value chain, in the supply chain, end-to-end. So these models, they are still there in different shapes or forms. You also find different terminologies, of course for that. The LLP 4PL is the most common. So, but let's then think about, what is the reason for this development? I mentioned some areas already. The first one linked to my earlier point is this was driven by end customers. If you think of delivery times, delivery quality, also transparency, visibility of the supply chain. That was the name. Second, it was driven by producers, manufacturers, by customers, by all customer strategies, focusing more on the core competencies and outsourcing parts of their value chain, to the point that they more or less then in the LLP 4PL environment outsource everything that has to do with logistics. I mentioned the complexity as a driver for that already, and of course technology helped to do that. One important point, and I will come back to that at the very end of my presentation, is there was more openness to collaboration. So companies saw a need for collaboration for different reasons, and they were open, to outsource services, and share. And when we talk about data analytics and big data, we are only at the beginning of this sharing journey. So this is what we've seen. Again, this is still around, and there are already concepts in place that people call a 5PL, but I will not go into that today. So the 4PL, the top of this pyramid, as I mentioned, is about an end-to-end supply chain view and end-to-end supply chain management. And this is the offering. As an example, this is a product slide of our DHL supply chain colleagues. This is the offering that is included in this LLP scope. I will not talk about all the points, but what you do see is it starts with designing, and then it goes down to operating the entire supply chain. There's a big component also of optimizing the supply chain over time, so finding efficiencies, increasing productivity as well. So it's not a static thing. And then there are many adjacent value-added services, customs being one of them. And it could even go into the data analytics, even big data analytics area for that. So again, point here is, there's one party in this complex value chain that is taking care of the end-to-end supply chain. Today this is called LLP. I don't know what this might be called in space or in space logistics, but a concept to think about. I'm going to use the last 10 minutes to provide you with an offer. I'd like to share how we at DHL approach the topic of innovation together with our customers. And I'd also want to open this offer, to everybody in the call here, where you feel, we can engage with each other. We are more than happy to do that. What is important to us is when we talk about innovation, we're looking at this from 3 angles. The most important one is we want to be close to the customers. For us, it is really important to understand what your needs are, what the needs of the industry are. And I think when you've also seen these transformation examples, we as a company, but also logistics as an industry, we have shown that we are able to adapt based on changing needs. But it's important for us, of course, to understand the Midwest. We want to be close to our operations, of course, because literally these colleagues are ultimately delivering the value to you, to the customers, to the industries. And we also spend a lot of time to understand technologies, and we continuously think about how can we use new technologies in our environment. Quite often these technologies are not being developed for our purposes, so we try to adapt those for the benefit of our customers as well. We are doing this on a global scale in our innovation centers. Also these are the places where we'd like to engage with everybody in your industry, in your area of responsibility. We have these innovation centers in Germany, in Singapore, and also in the US. We're about to build one in Middle East Africa. These are no places to sell our services. These are places to engage with our customers and to jointly work on new solutions, on new innovations, think about the future. That's really, really important to us. So also there, you are invited to join the conversation. In addition to that, if you're interested in how we look into the future, we do have the DHL Logistics Trend Radar. We publish this on a biannual basis, where we look at technology trends. You see them on the right-hand side, and social and business trends. on the left-hand side. So whenever you're interested in what these trends are all about, what they mean for logistics and beyond, feel free to download the trend radar. We are sharing this openly with everybody because we truly believe that this open approach is needed when it comes to innovation and really changing things significantly. Last not least, I also brought two examples two innovation examples. I must say very down-to-earth examples, but still want to show you how we approach these topics. On the left-hand side, you see drones being used for visual inspection and also for measuring, which is important for big shipments. I mean, these are shipments that we are talking for the space industry as well, and we're using these drones for that inspection. Can do this pretty much everywhere. Bottom right, you see a process we have implemented and we have rolled out in many of our operations globally that we call vision picking, where we use augmented reality glasses for our pickers in the warehouses. So these pickers, are collecting the orders. They're putting these in one place, and then it gets packed and shipped. This is quite often a very manual process. You see a lot of paper and pens in many warehouses there still. Using Google glasses and other glasses, we are now able to do this hands-free, increasing safety and increasing picking accuracy. So even if you don't see the immediate link to what you're currently working on or what is relevant for your industry, my message here is we're very open to discuss technologies and how we can transfer that to your benefits, and at the same time we are very open to understand your needs and try to bring in our competencies and our technologies and our knowledge in order to serve them the best we can. So in closing here, I hope you did find some areas, some food for thought here when it comes to this transformational process. I would argue that currently, we are still on Earth with our services, but we are providing these services to many players in the industry already. However, I'd love to engage with many of you in the future discussing, how can we jointly transfer this logic, the approaches into space and also get this end-to-end view. So feel free to reach out to me, or you see also here our Innovation Center email address, and you'll find me on LinkedIn and places. I'd like to close with that quote on the left-hand side, where it says, if you want growth, innovate. That's what we're doing, absolutely, and probably everybody in the call. If you want exponential growth, connect. And this should have been my message for today. From our perspective, we are at a starting point when it comes to looking into space. Again, we have some businesses and some capabilities that we are already applying, but we truly feel that together, if we stay connected and start this engagement process, this can really be a game changer and underlying the importance of logistics in space that was also outlined before by Professor Lebeck. So with this, thank you very much. Again, thanks for having me today, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions as well. The question reads, what does DHL think about the use of suborbital transport? Are your clients ready for that? I guess that's a great question. Would have been probably a better question for Professor Lebeck. I have to admit that in my conversations with customers, this has not been a topic yet, but this is for sure also the reason for that is for sure also that we are not so much in talks with the customers, the companies that might be thinking about that. So for sure not an expert on that. Nothing in my conversation so far. However, I understand there will be also a panel right after me and with experts on that to answer that. But I also see Ollie joining here. Maybe Ollie, you can add to that.
Mm-hmm. So we've got the sound again.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good to have you back, Candice. So let me just respond to Klaus. Suborbital. So the key is speed, right? So you need to get something to the other side of the planet in 30 minutes or 90 minutes instead of, a week or 2 weeks. So is there anything you can think of that would be so valuable and so time, perishable that that you might want to get it to the other side of the planet and pay the extra cost? And the only thing I can think of is organ transplant. If you had an organ transplant that needed to be in Beijing from Düsseldorf to Beijing in 2 hours, you would pay a lot of money for that. But it's the only cargo I can think of, Klaus. I don't know.
Yes, I would agree. I mean, this is not having these conversations with the customers, but just in general, also if you ask yourself, you would always prefer speed. You would always like to have like what you just ordered online within an hour or so. However, it comes down to all these points that what is the willingness to pay for that. We have these kind of discussions quite often. I wanna see a same day delivery, and of course we can provide that. But when it comes to the cost, the decisions are quite often made in a different way. So I would agree, Ollie, on that. The other one is that many logistic systems and industries, and your organ example, but in life sciences also in general, they are set up to dealing with that and are quite fast already. So, this marginal improvement of delivery time, this will be very costly. So hard to think of at least a high number of examples here.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Next question I have is still from our colleague from NASA, who is really excited to see how forward-thinking DHL continues to be in this area. And he or she is asking, what advice do you have to help encourage collaboration across private companies to help encourage this shift as government try to move away from being the primary customer, encouraging scaling to enable multiple companies and robust commercial niches? That's a long question.
Long question, long answer. Driving collaboration. I mean, hard to give an advice when it comes to public versus private, I think. I mean, what we've seen is that it's quite often good to have a more or less neutral party in the game to kick off such a conversation. Academic institutions can be one, or NGOs could be others. So that's one thing that we've seen where it works. By the way, we've seen this in many cases in the area of sustainability, bringing together the right parties where no single party would do the first move because there's a first mover disadvantage to do certain things. So that might help as a catalyst. That's one thing. And then a second, I mean, places like the innovation centers that I mentioned, I mean, we really mean it. We mean it as a more or less neutral place. And we're keeping our salespeople out, for example, at least in the initial conversations. That might help as well. But of course, there's a question of like, what is the supplier-customer relationship? But the first one, bringing in neutral parties, ideally on a neutral ground, has been a success factor in a couple of areas I've seen.
Thank you very much. One of our question is like, was DHL even asked to work with the space industry?
Yes, absolutely, yes. I mean, for sure, when it comes to movements on Earth. So you will have Luca on your panel from the Orbit CEO of the Orbit Next, and we just did a nice shipment with them from Italy to Cape Canaveral. And Luca, hi Luca, good to see you. Luca can for sure also talk about that, and we are excited about this collaboration, and we do see this only on a starting point. When we talk about bigger customers of ours, and I mentioned Airbus before, we've done these kind of shipments. However, I also want to say this very openly. When it comes to going beyond that, beyond the let's say, normal, typical movement of stuff. And I do not want to downplay the complexity. This is really complex movements of very expensive assets. But going beyond that, we are in conversations. We've been approached by a couple of companies. However, this is really starting the discussions.
Okay, so this is your first step into the space industry.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's not
another question
not
from the audience.
Today. Sorry for that.
Was impact on transport cost is expected from the ever decreasing source of oil worldwide? What storage replacement solution for land transport has DHL considered in the coming years? So I think this is more a down-to-earth question.
I was about to say that this is a real down-to-earth question. Yes, absolutely. So let me start with saying that already back in 2008 or 2009, we as a company, we committed ourselves to reduce our CO2 emissions significantly. And only 2 years ago, we set the goal that we want to be net zero CO2 in 2050. So this is a big topic for us. When it comes to land transportation, there are many initiatives going on, and there are some areas where we really rolled out alternatives. We have more than 10,000 fully electric delivery vehicles on the streets, mainly in Europe. So this is really a rollout plan that we're following. So that's electric vehicles. We are testing hydrogen trucks. So when the trucks become bigger, this is the best source that we have so far. So we're testing hydrogen as well. And then let me add one point here is that we are also using more and more bicycles and cargo bikes when it comes to delivery, not only CO2 friendly, but also helps when it comes to local emissions, air pollution, and so on and so forth in city areas. So I know quite often it's been talked about electrification and hydrogen, but there are also very smart ways to improve the deliveries of the final mile or final meters, so to say, when it comes to bikes, cargo bikes, and so on.
Okay, thank you very much for this answer. I'll take the opportunity to ask a question for myself. I see that in your slide, it was slide 7, there was this pyramid with the different layers and the evolution of logistics in general. So based maybe on the talk you had from Professor De Weck and your knowledge of the space industry, where do you think we are on this pyramid in the space industry, considering space logistics?
I think that's an excellent question. So thank you for that. Let me first say, this is not necessarily for an industry about to reach the top of the pyramid. Right? This is one way of dealing with that. So I would say we're somewhere between 2 and level 3, maybe. So my observation is, in many cases, the asset owner, still is taking care of the logistics. So that would be like the lowest level of the pyramid. Of course, we see some outsourcing. That's a second and maybe third level when it comes to ground transportation. And then maybe this is a perfect segue even to your panel. Luca can for sure talk about that. We now see asset owners in space providing not only transportation as a service, but also value-added services on top of that, including the circular element. So that would be then clearly a level 3, a 3PL solution. And then from there, it's not that far to reach the 4PL in certain areas.
Great, and thank you very much for this transition, as we can now close this Q&A session for the talk from DHL from Klaus Dohrmann. Before we go to the next step for our panel discussion, New Space Enabling Agile Space Logistics, moderated by Euroconsult, I would like to invite you to take a 5-minute break to move away from the computer, get something to drink, open the window to get some fresh air, and we'll find you again in 5 minutes in the studio here in Lausanne.